December 19, 1997, Westwood, Los Angeles. The barricades are shaking. Security guards are locking arms as thousands of screaming fans push forward, their breath fogging into the cold night air. Camera flashes erupt like lightning, posters with one name stretch above the crowd: Leo. Inside the theater, Leonardo DiCaprio is 23 years old. His tuxedo fits perfectly, his smile is trained. But as the applause detonates around him during the premiere of Titanic, something shifts behind his eyes. The room isn't celebrating an actor. It's consuming an image. You can almost feel it, that strange split second when admiration turns into ownership, when the world stops seeing your work and starts seeing your face. Within weeks, Titanic becomes a global phenomenon, the highest-grossing film ever made at the time. Teen magazines crown him the new king of Hollywood. Paparazzi camp outside his apartment. Studio executives flood his team with scripts. Romantic epics, action franchises, high-paying studio vehicles engineered to extend the frenzy. The offers are staggering. One of them reportedly hovers around $20 million, an astronomical figure for a 23-year-old actor in the late 1990s. A career-defining payday. A studio-backed blockbuster designed to cement him as Hollywood's permanent leading heartthrob. Most actors would sign before the ink dried. But DiCaprio doesn't. Behind closed doors, away from flashing cameras, he's wrestling with something no headline can capture: the fear of being frozen in time. Hollywood loves momentum, but it also loves repetition. And repetition can become a cage. He had seen it happen before. Young actors who exploded overnight then slowly dissolved into caricatures of their breakout roles. Romantic leads who never escaped the romantic lead box. Franchise stars who became inseparable from one character. At 23, with the entire industry begging him to capitalize, Leonardo DiCaprio hesitates. Not publicly. Quietly. Because he understands something dangerous. If he says yes to everything now, he might never regain control again. You can almost hear the conversations: agents emphasizing market dominance, studio executives promising legacy, producers insisting the timing is perfect. But DiCaprio's fear isn't failure. It's permanence. The permanence of being the Titanic guy. The permanence of screaming fans drowning out serious craft. The permanence of never being taken seriously again. And so, at the very peak of his commercial value, he does something counterintuitive. He slows down. No immediate follow-up blockbuster. No rush sequel energy. No saturation campaign to extend the hysteria. Instead, he disappears. Not completely, but strategically. In an industry that equates visibility with power, absence is a radical move. Studios recalibrate when a star becomes scarce, demand rises, leverage shifts. And somewhere in that recalibration, DiCaprio begins reshaping not just his career, but his identity. Because this isn't about turning down money. It's about turning down a version of himself. But what exactly was that $20 million role? And why did refusing it send shockwaves through studio boardrooms? The answer begins with a meeting that almost locked him into a future he didn't want. The meeting takes place in a glass-walled office overlooking the Pacific. Early 1998, the Titanic wave is still cresting. On the table, a franchise-ready script, big budget, global rollout, merchandising potential built in. And across from him, executives who don't see risk, they see inevitability. The pitch is simple. Strike while the world is obsessed. Solidify the brand. Own the box office for the next decade. The reported number floats into the room like oxygen. $20 million. At 23 years old, that kind of money doesn't just change your lifestyle, it changes your gravitational pull in the industry. It announces permanence. But permanence is exactly what makes him uneasy. Because the role, while commercially powerful, would have reinforced the very image he was trying to outgrow: the beautiful, emotionally accessible leading man. The poster-ready face studios could replicate and repackage. He had already felt the consequences of that identity. After Romeo plus Juliet, the teen magazines. After Titanic, the hysteria. He later described that period as overwhelming: the loss of privacy, the loss of control, the sense that his career was being steered by forces louder than his own instincts. You can almost picture the internal calculation happening behind his calm expression. If he accepts, he guarantees dominance. If he refuses, he risks momentum. And momentum in Hollywood is currency. But DiCaprio isn't thinking in 2-year windows, he's thinking in decades. Because something else had happened during the chaos of Titanic's release. He had reconnected with a director who valued reinvention over repetition. Martin Scorsese. Scorsese didn't offer him heartthrob mythology, he offered him moral complexity, psychological unraveling, characters who sweat, who bleed, who fracture. And in those conversations, a different future began forming. One that required restraint. Turning down the $20 million role wasn't just about declining a paycheck, it was about signaling to the industry. I am not a product cycle. Studios don't love uncertainty. When a star refuses the obvious next move, executives recalibrate. Some question loyalty, some question strategy. But scarcity builds mystique. And mystique builds longevity. Instead of cashing in immediately, DiCaprio aligned himself with projects that were darker, slower, more volatile. The Beach explored disillusionment. Gangs of New York buried him in grime and violence. These weren't fan service vehicles, they were credibility plays. And credibility compounds quietly. By the early 2000s, something subtle had changed. He was no longer the boy on the bow of the Titanic. He was the ambitious collaborator of one of cinema's most respected directors. The industry tone shifted. He wasn't overexposed. He wasn't diluted. He was evolving. This is where the psychology of restraint reveals its power. Hollywood expects you to consume opportunity immediately, but by refusing instant expansion, DiCaprio created narrative tension around his career. Audiences didn't get constant access, they got curated appearances. And when you are not always available, every choice feels intentional. But restraint comes with risk. Because what if the darker films failed? What if audiences rejected the transformation? What if the industry labeled him difficult? At 23, walking away from $20 million is bold. But sustaining that philosophy for 20 years, that requires something deeper than confidence. It requires discipline under pressure. And the real test of that discipline wouldn't arrive until awards season started whispering a question that followed him for years. Was he truly one of the greats, or just carefully managing perception? That question would haunt him. And the next phase of his strategy would determine whether restraint alone was enough. February 27, 2005, Kodak Theater, Hollywood. The envelope opens. Leonardo DiCaprio sits upright in his seat, jaw tight, hands pressed together. He's nominated for The Aviator. The performance is transformative, obsessive, volatile, raw. The industry is watching. But when the name is read, it isn't his. Polite applause, a controlled smile, a nod. And just like that, the narrative shifts. He isn't the teen idol anymore. He isn't just the box office prince. Now he's something more dangerous in Hollywood, the respected actor who can't quite secure the crown. This is where many careers fracture. Because once you've proven seriousness, the pressure changes. It's no longer about escaping an image, it's about validating the transformation. Every role becomes strategic, every collaboration scrutinized. You can almost feel the tension building through the late 2000s. Blood Diamond, another nomination, another loss. Revolutionary Road, emotional excavation. Shutter Island, psychological descent. Inception, a commercial triumph but carefully chosen, cerebral, layered. Notice the pattern. Even when he enters blockbuster territory, he avoids franchise repetition. No superheroes, no cinematic universe contracts, no multi-film character lock-ins. He stays mobile. Mobility equals control. And control is the currency he has been protecting since 1997. Behind the scenes, this strategy does something subtle but powerful. Studios begin adapting to him. Instead of molding DiCaprio into pre-built franchises, filmmakers start building prestige projects around his availability. When his name attaches to a film, financing accelerates. Directors gain leverage, scripts evolve to match his range. Hollywood recalibrates around scarcity. But the Oscar shadow lingers. By the time The Wolf of Wall Street premieres in 2013, the conversation has hardened into a cultural refrain. When will he finally win? Public expectation can be heavier than typecasting. And here, where the psychological discipline deepens. He doesn't pivot toward Oscar bait in the traditional sense. He doesn't chase safe historical heroism or sympathetic portrayals designed to guarantee sentiment. Instead, he chooses extremes. Jordan Belfort is reckless, morally corrosive, explosive. Hugh Glass in The Revenant is nearly silent, physically brutalized, stripped of glamour. These are not comfortable roles. They are endurance tests. And that's the hidden throughline of his career after turning down that early $20 million, endurance over explosion. When The Revenant production reports surface, freezing temperatures, physical exhaustion, punishing realism, the narrative transforms again. It's no longer about whether he deserves an Oscar. It's about whether he has suffered enough for one. But suffering isn't strategy. Control is. Because by the time he steps onto that Oscars stage in 2016, golden statue finally in hand, the win doesn't feel like redemption. It feels inevitable. 20 years of careful calibration. 20 years of avoiding overexposure. 20 years of saying no more than yes. The applause that night isn't hysteria. It's respect. And respect lasts longer than obsession. But here's the deeper twist. Winning the Oscar could have marked a new kind of trap, the temptation to relax, to cash in, to finally accept the easy roles. Instead, he does something eerily consistent. He disappears again. Long gaps between projects. Selective collaborations. Minimal public oversharing. In an era where celebrity culture rewards constant visibility, social media presence, press cycles, saturation marketing, DiCaprio maintains distance. Because the original lesson from 1997 never left him. Visibility creates demand. Scarcity creates power. And the final piece of this story isn't about awards at all. It's about how Hollywood treats the people who refuse to be constantly available. Because when someone at the top chooses absence over dominance, the industry doesn't replace them. It waits. Summer 2019, Beverly Hills. Streaming wars are exploding. Superhero franchises dominate global box offices. Actors are signing multi-film deals worth hundreds of millions. Visibility has become relentless: premieres, press tour, social media campaigns, brand partnerships. And Leonardo DiCaprio. He's barely visible. No cinematic universe contract. No annual franchise installment. No oversharing online. Instead, he reemerges selectively. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a nostalgic, character-driven film about fading stardom. It's almost meta. An actor who once feared being frozen as a heartthrob, now playing a man terrified of becoming obsolete. But here's the difference: Rick Dalton fears irrelevance, DiCaprio engineered longevity. That distinction didn't happen by accident. It began the moment he walked away from that early $20 million offer. Because in Hollywood, constant presence feels powerful, but it can quietly erode mystique. Overexposure shortens attention spans. Franchise repetition narrows perception. Ubiquity reduces anticipation. DiCaprio understood something rare at 23. The audience must miss you. When you appear sparingly, each project feels like an event. Directors compete for your time, studios adjust budgets to fit your availability. You are no longer chasing opportunity. Opportunity reorganizes around you. And that's the psychological reversal at the heart of this story. Saying no wasn't defensive, it was offensive strategy. He wasn't avoiding work, he was controlling timing. Even in recent years, his choices reflect this pattern: socially conscious themes, morally complex protagonists, collaborations with filmmakers known for depth rather than spectacle. He has never allowed himself to become algorithmic. In an industry now driven by streaming metrics and engagement cycles, that restraint feels almost rebellious. And here's the industry truth most viewers don't see. When a star refuses to be constantly available, their leverage increases. Producers wait longer. Scripts get rewritten. Budgets shift. Hollywood recalibrates around absence. Contrast that with actors who ride explosive momentum without pause. Many burn brightly, few sustain mystique for 3 decades. The $20 million he declined in the late 1990s. Financially, it was a risk. Strategically, it was insulation. It insulated him from typecasting, from saturation fatigue, from being locked into a franchise identity he couldn't escape. And perhaps most importantly, it insulated his reputation from dilution. Today, when his name appears attached to a project, the reaction isn't hysteria. It's curiosity. What is he choosing now? Why this story? Why this director? That curiosity is currency. And currency built on anticipation lasts longer than currency built on frenzy. If you step back and look at the arc, from the chaos of Titanic to the austerity of The Revenant, from teen idol hysteria to controlled prestige, you see a pattern that goes beyond talent. You see emotional discipline. In a system that rewards constant expansion, he practiced contraction. In a culture that rewards noise, he chose silence. In an industry addicted to speed, he slowed down. That's not luck. That's design. The $20 million role wasn't the loss. It was the pivot. Because sometimes the most powerful move in Hollywood isn't the role you accept. It's the one you quietly walk away from before it defines you.